All right, thanks. So we're going to go ahead and jump into talking about Google Analytics right now. And essentially, what I wanted to focus on today was dashboards. And dashboards are kind of a really fascinating part of Google Analytics. You can see right now I'm logged into our JB Media account. And when I log in here and I go up to this top area called customizations and dashboards, I can click in here and essentially I'm going to be able to create these kind of areas where I'm able to see a lot of different information that I'm tracking all in one place. And essentially dashboards are made out of widgets, which means I can take data and put it into these kind of like individual displays and then build a whole page that has all of these things displayed. So the purpose behind the dashboard really is to make it very, very simple for me to look at the Google Analytics data that means the most to me. So as most of you know, Google Analytics is a really in-depth system. It's sort of endless and endless and endless what goes on inside of here. And they're continuing to really evolve their tool. And so I feel like it's becoming even more important for people who are using analytics to essentially have a dashboard that's set up to help you really have a baseline on performance over time. So you don't necessarily have to click through every single area of the system. The other thing that it does is it makes it really shareable. So if you have other people that you need to share the information with, if you have a client that you need to give their reporting to, the dashboard's just going to make it really easy and fast for you to tap into it, pull the information most important to them, and send it to them. So I kind of wanted to give everybody an idea of how this works. And then I'm going to go over to my presentation. We're going to touch on a couple key things. So again, if I go to customization and dashboards, you can see in JB Media, we've already created some. And then also I can click this create button. And when I click the create button, I have a few different options. The first is I can create a blank canvas, which means there's nothing there. And I can start to add the widgets based on what I want. The next option is a starter dashboard, and that starter dashboard will typically have some things that Google Analytics thinks are commonly, but often placed inside of a dashboard, like maybe the number of users on your website or something like that. And so you can use their starter dashboard if you want sort of something that'll help kick you off in understanding the layout. Then you have this amazing option called import from the gallery. And the gallery is basically Google Analytics Solutions Gallery, and they have a number of different things that they include in here. You can see right now it says All Solutions Dashboard. If I X this out, there's also lots of different things that they put into here having to do with filters and having to do with all sorts of other things that you can add on to your analytics or different ways of organizing it. And you can see we've got categories on the left-hand side. So for people who are interested in where they're getting their website traffic from, acquisition is a good thing to look at. If I'm doing ad campaigns, if I'm focused in on conversions, like a form, like what Cassie mentioned earlier. If I have an e-commerce website and I've turned on my analytics e-commerce features, then I'm able to kind of look at things that are specifically for that. And so I can actually dig through this huge gallery of other people's dashboards that they've shared with the public where things are already set up. So I feel like this is a little bit of a rabbit hole if you're brand new. However, if you're really interested in tracking your search engine optimization or you're doing Google AdWords and you want to really see some specific data, you could, click on one of these and then review the different types of dashboards that other people have already created and get some ideas from them. So you can just actually pull one right out of here. And then also you can go to the bigger version of the gallery and, like I said, really dig into all the different things that they provide. So when you first actually start creating, you have these options to learn from other people, to kind of get suggestions from Google, or to literally just start from scratch yourself and play around with it. And I kind of feel like everybody learns a little differently and feels more comfortable. So pick the thing that you feel is going to help you. Or if you start out with a blank canvas and you don't feel like you understand how to get it started, then go back and use the starter dashboard or import something that you want to play around with. But essentially, once you've created the dashboards, like I said, when you click there, you'll get this list. and you can continue to make different things. So you don't necessarily have to have one dashboard for everything. If you're doing SEO, social media, and Google AdWords, you could actually have separate dashboards for all those things, right? So that you can actually evaluate them separately without kind of having one big, like bucket with everything inside of it. But I'm going to pull up the sample dashboard that we have so we can kind of look at what's involved in creating this. So you'll notice in our sample dashboard, we have some things that are a little bit more basic right now at this point, because I think the best place to start if you are either newer to analytics or you've never used this is to start out by just looking at the basic things. So again, it may be just the number of users. It may be the number of sessions like we see here. It may be the top landing pages for organic search. All of this is pretty straightforward data that's easily findable inside of Google Analytics, typically under the acquisition section, right? So don't start by trying to get really in depth with all your dimensions and metrics and segments, because if you start with all that stuff, you kind of get a little bit confused. So hopefully even in the beginning time of using analytics, you're able to say, all right, we're doing SEO. So one of the things we want to see is, are people hitting our landing pages? And is our organic search going up? Well, that's what this widget will do for you. Right? It's showing you organic search specifically and what the top landing pages are. So I can literally see, from organic search, the home page doing really well. How to calculate a Facebook advertising budget, our blog is doing really well in organic search, right? So this allows us to see if we're doing different pages and blog posts, and that's supposed to be affecting our SEO. Do we see the traffic coming in from organic search? Over time, do we see it actually going up? And of course, you've got this date range here. So you're able to adjust the date range at any point inside your dashboard and look at views of the data. So that's where I think you want to start. Once you actually get some things set up, when you're ready to kind of dig into a deeper level of, let's say, like I said, the metrics and the segmentations, that's when you're going to want to start to really learn Google Analytics a little bit more in depth and understand the kind of data that they're actually tracking. So I find a lot of people are struggling with, I don't know how to create secondary dimensions or when to create them, or I don't know when I should be adding the segments or not. And it's funny because it's kind of like you got to reverse engineer your thinking, because really the goals are what matters. And then we figure out what data legitimately proves or disproves the goal. So the more complex your goals get, the more complex data you have to look at. So in the beginning, it's okay when things are very simple seeming, and maybe you're not using segmentation at first. That's fine, because maybe you're not ready to do an analysis on that level because your goal is really broad. Maybe you're a startup and your goal is to just get people to your website, right? Because we need people to know about what you're doing. So always think of it in kind of these increments. And it's not the data that's really pushing you. It's really the goals of what you're trying to accomplish that's pushing you, right? So that's where, if I start to say, hey, we really want to know how many people come from Facebook every month, and how many of them out of the total number that come actually complete our form on our website. And then how many people who complete that form also downloaded our ebook, right? So once I start to want to know the answers to those type of questions, then I can start going back to my Google Analytics and figuring out what pieces of data actually do I need to see to draw that conclusion. So there's going to be, some learning curve for anybody who's new. And if you've been using Google Analytics for a while, it's really about getting comfortable with the idea of data being attached to things. And I think this is where we have quite a bit of resistance in the small business world or with nonprofits. People don't feel like they have the time to really dig in, and learn every single aspect of what the data means. But over time, it's really important. I want to kind of show you a visual here. So if I click this edit button just on this very simple widget, which is simply showing us the number of sessions in the last week, right? It's going to open up this kind of pop-up box that shows all the different ways that I can look at the data, pull in other pieces of data, and all of this stuff. And so you'll notice first we've got metrics, timelines, geomaps, tables, and then we can do pie charts and bar charts as well. But below that, we've got, graph the following metric over time. We've chosen sessions. I can compare this to any other metric. And when I actually click on this, you'll notice there's a lot in here. Right? So this can feel kind of overwhelming. So the goal is one thing, to kind of dig through and look and understand what applies to you and what doesn't. So I can know right away when I see things like product. If I'm not using the e-commerce system, this isn't going to matter to me, right? When I see things that have to do with carts or checkouts or refunds, there's lots of stuff in here that'll have to do with ads and AdWords. Well, if I don't have AdWords attached to this, I don't have to worry about any of those metrics. The other cool thing that Google did was, if I'm not sure what a metric is, I can roll over it. So I can see here revenue per user. Well, man, everybody would love to know the revenue per user, right?
Yep.
But there's not magical fairies that know this. And it literally tells us the average revenue per user, basically for mobile apps. This is an in-app revenue only. Well, right now, if I'm not a mobile app, I know this doesn't matter to me. So that's the one challenge we all have to kind of cross over, is that Google's giving us this insane amount of options, and a lot of us in the beginning, we won't use this. Or if we don't have these goals set up, then we wouldn't be using these, right? And there's lots of e-commerce stuff, and like I said, you see lots of things that have to do with CPC and cost per transaction. A lot of that, if I'm not running an ad campaign, I can't see. But there are a lot of metrics that can be very valuable to smaller companies. In addition, you've got these filters, and the filters, which I'm going to talk about in a second, are basically connected to something that's a little bit more programming oriented. It's sort of like an include, exclude. So I can say I want to see certain data or I don't want to see certain data. But a lot of this is based on the regular expressions, which means, what you're saying is, if a URL has /blog/ in it, I can exclude all the blog pages from the data, or I could include the blog page. So to use the filters, you kind of have to understand that all the data is kind of got its own name and own code string. So sometimes smaller companies, we never touch on this because regular expressions is pretty advanced. But the cool thing is you do have the ability to do the dimensions, the metrics, the segments, and then also to even filter things down on a deeper level. So this is where dashboards can be really kind of powerful. Again, you'll notice if we just close this out and look at some of these other ones, they're all essentially set up in the same way. So here you can see this widget shows us the number of sessions, which percentage of those sessions were new, and what source and medium they came from. So was it Google Organic or Google Paid? Was it this particular email list? Was it a referral from Facebook? Right? So basically, if we click in here, you'll see that it's set up to show us these kind of three metrics or dimensions of data, which is sessions, percentage of new sessions, and then where those sessions came from. Right? And so here you can see we've chosen source medium as a metric. We've got percentage of new sessions as a secondary dimension. You can see we're asking basically to show certain things. So as you're trying to work on this type of stuff, again, it should evolve over time. The more that you understand what your goals mean when we look at data, right? And so this is just a big leap that I think a lot of us have to make over time. It gets a little bit difficult. And then once we have Google Analytics set up, it feels so overwhelming. So start to pull out things and maybe focus on just one goal and assigning it one or two metrics so that you can understand how they relate. And Cassie, I see your question. What's a helpful or useful way to analyze audience data to make future decisions? So again, what is the goal for the audiences? Like, what is it that you really wanted them to be doing on the website? Because I feel like this stuff only matters when we can assign goals to it. And the goals would be maybe they land on a certain page. Maybe they spend over 4 minutes on the website. Maybe they complete a form. Maybe they click a download. If we're just looking at, like demographics, so if we're targeting a region, then that's an easy thing that I can do inside of Google Analytics, because I can look at every state and every city that people come from. Let's say I had a landing page and I was targeting people in South Carolina, then I could correlate the South Carolina landing page with the number of people on the website from South Carolina and see what percentage of them ended up on my landing page for that geographical audience. So does that make sense? In the audience section, my favorite things to focus on, which can all be put into a dashboard, typically is going to be looking at the geo, which is all the locations. I love looking at that. If we look at mobile, I love seeing what percentage of my traffic. Earlier, I think it was Dennis who said, 96% of the traffic is mobile. I like to look at that kind of thing about my audience. If I go into, things like behavior, I can see, how frequent and how recent their visit was. I can see, the number of new people versus returning people. So if I'm just looking to analyze the audience data, I think the biggest things that we look at is where are they coming from? How long are they staying? What's the new versus returning? So do people come back to the site or not? And how many people are using their mobile phones and their tablets? Is the most popular content on a desktop also the most popular content on the mobile phone and the tablet, right? So that to me is a really interesting thing where I can combine two metrics and see, hey, a lot of people on mobile get to this page, but a lot of people on the desktop are landing on this page instead. That just allows me to see that. And then I see Dale's question, can you get any closer to identifying who has been on your site and geographical of location of the visitor? We're currently using lead forensics to tie to company name visiting, but not sure we're getting much value for the investment. So what happens with analytics is you actually have to dig deeper and set up additional code if you want to track something. Like basically if you have a website where you're collecting the company name, yes, analytics can track that for you and it can display in your reports, but that's like a custom setup. So essentially you need to get a programmer who understands the analytics code and understands how to integrate that with your website so it will pull that company name into the data. So I've seen companies where they're collecting company name of the person, their title or position at the company, and how long they've worked there as part of like a big database that they give people access to. Well, then I can go in and see which did operations managers or CEOs look at more stuff that day. Yeah. Right. But that is a custom integration with the Drupal system. And so, lead forensics might be doing that for you. But again, definitely analytics has that capability. It would just take some custom development. And again, e-commerce and Google AdWords, like if you look here at demographics and interests, you can use this when you're running ad campaigns.
Yeah, actually, what I usually do, if let's close that up for a second. So under acquisition, and you scroll down. Under acquisition. Come on, work with me. They have an actual, I want to show you, they have an AdWords custom profile for everything related to AdWords, so I can see what my campaigns are, what I'm spending. And it goes back to what Sarah was saying about the filters. It's you got to cut it to what you want to zone in and focus on what's important to you,
Yeah. So does that help, Dale, in just making sense of, where else you can get deeper information? When it comes to sort of individual customer information, that's where customizations become important, or having an e-commerce store where I can plug in the e-commerce data. Because then it might be collecting a lot more customer information that then can be displayed in here. But on sort of the base level, kind of most basic thing, it doesn't do that. So I know we're coming right up on 1 o'clock, so I don't want to keep anybody too long. But if anybody does have a question, I'm glad to stay a little bit longer and just answer anything. Again, I'm going to provide this really in-depth presentation on this that you'll be able to dig into. And essentially what I did was go through Google's help system and literally organize it around dashboards so that you can understand what are dimensions, what are metrics, what are filters, and actually click on the link where Google explains it so that I can source all my information. But this way you'll have a copy of my information as well as Peter's, and you can really dig into this and learn more. But I just want to say we appreciate having everybody here today on our live webinar. And we will have, again, on the first Wednesday of July, another free webinar. Please feel free to join us. Please feel free to tell your friends and go back to the landing page to find out what our next topics will be that first Wednesday of July at 12:10. So have a great day, and we hope to talk to you in the future.